The smell hit me before anything else. That sharp, sweet, rotten smell of lilies left too long in water, mixed with the chlorine cleaner they use in hotel banquet halls. I was sitting at table 4 in a rented gold chair, holding a champagne flute I hadn't touched. The ice sculpture in the middle of the room, a swan, his idea, not mine, was already starting to slump on one wing. 10 years. We were celebrating 10 years of marriage. There were 212 people in the room. I'd counted them while the photographer was setting up because I didn't know what else to do with my hands. My name is Ren, sorry. Let me start that over. My name is Cassidy Belrose. I'm 31 years old, and 3 months ago I was a woman who packed her husband's lunch every morning and ironed his shirts on Sunday nights because he liked the collars stiff. I haven't ironed a shirt since. I doubt I ever will again. The night I want to tell you about started normally. That's the thing nobody warns you about. The worst nights of your life don't announce themselves. They put on a tuxedo and pour you a glass of something nice and ask if you've seen the seating chart. My husband, I'll call him my husband for now, I'm not ready to say his name yet, had insisted on the Belmar Hotel ballroom. He'd insisted on the live string quartet. He'd insisted on the engraved invitations with our monogram in gold foil, even though I told him 3 times we didn't need a monogram. We weren't royalty. We ran a small architecture firm out of a converted garage in Sacramento. It's our 10-year, Cass, he'd said. Let me give you the night you deserve. I should have known then. Men only say the night you deserve when they're about to give you something else entirely. I'd been a working architect once, before I met him in the studio at Cal Poly, before I followed him to Sacramento, before his mother got sick and we agreed I'd put my license on hold for just a year to help. The year became 2. 2 became 7. By the time his mother passed, our firm was his firm, and the only drafting I did was on the back of grocery receipts when I had a porch idea I couldn't shake. So there I was at table 4, in a navy dress I'd had altered 3 times because I'd lost weight that summer and couldn't figure out why. My hair was up. My mother's pearls were around my neck. She'd left them to me when she passed 8 years back, and I wore them at every important thing, hoping she could see me through them somehow. The string quartet stopped mid-song. That's the first detail I want you to hold on to. They didn't finish the piece. They just stopped, and the cellist looked up at the stage like she'd been told to. My husband was standing at the microphone. He'd been the one to insist on a microphone. I remember thinking how handsome he looked in that charcoal suit, the one I'd picked out for him at Nordstrom the previous fall. And I remember feeling proud. Actually proud. Because he was a man who cleaned up well and he was mine. He was mine. Friends, he said. Family. Thank you all for coming tonight. People clapped. I clapped too. I was clapping at my own anniversary. That's how stupid I was. 10 years is a long time, he said. And I've been thinking a lot lately about what marriage really means. A few chuckles from the older couples. My husband's business partner, a man with a permanent sunburn and capped teeth, gave a slow, knowing nod from table 6. And I've come to realize, my husband said, that I haven't been honest with myself. Or with my wife. The room went quiet in that specific way. Rooms do when something is about to break. I want to tell you I knew. I want to tell you I sensed it coming. I didn't. I sat there with my flute of untouched champagne and I smiled up at him because that's what wives do. We smile up at our husbands at parties. I've spent the last year, he said, with a woman who reminds me what it feels like to be alive. I heard a fork drop somewhere behind me. I heard one of his cousins say, "Oh my God." I heard nothing in my own head except a high, thin ringing. He looked right at me, right into my eyes. Cassidy, I want a divorce, tonight, in front of our families, because I'm done pretending. And then, and this is the part I'm going to remember on my deathbed, a woman in a red silk dress stood up at table 11. A woman I had never seen before. She walked in heels so high they should have wobbled but didn't, up to the stage. She put her hand on my husband's arm. She turned her face toward the room and she smiled, and her lipstick was the exact same shade of red as the dress, and she said, "I'm Brielle, I'm pregnant, and I'm not letting him live a lie for one more day." Pregnant. She was pregnant. I had wanted children. We had tried. 3 rounds of IVF, 2 miscarriages. He had held my hand in the parking lot of the fertility clinic and told me it was okay, that we had each other, that maybe it just wasn't meant to be. It was meant to be. just not with me. The room did not erupt. That's the thing the movies get wrong. Real betrayal in a public place is quiet. People don't gasp and shout. They look at their plates. They look at their phones. My husband's aunt, a woman who had taught me to make peach cobbler in 2017, actually got up and left through the side door without making eye contact with me. I sat there in my altered navy dress at table 4, and I felt my mother's pearls, suddenly, like a noose. I did not cry. I want you to know that, not because I'm strong, because I was so far past crying that my body didn't know what to do. I sat there and I watched my husband and his pregnant girlfriend stand on the stage where he promised to honor and cherish me 10 years ago, and I felt myself become a piece of furniture. That's when she stopped the music. I mean, the music had already stopped, but there was this hum, this low murmur of 200 people pretending not to look at me, and a voice cut through it. "Turn the lights up, please." An old woman's voice. Steady, low, the kind of voice that doesn't repeat itself. The house lights came up. She was sitting alone at table 15 in the back. I had not noticed her during the cocktail hour. I had not noticed her name on the seating chart. She looked, I thought at first, like somebody's grandmother. Silver hair pinned back in a soft twist, a pale gray suit jacket over a cream blouse, a string of pearls that made mine look like Cracker Jacks. She was small. She had not raised her voice, but every person in that ballroom turned to look at her. She stood up. She walked, slowly, with a cane I had not seen her enter with, toward the stage. She did not look at my husband. She did not look at the woman in red. She walked past their table and stopped at table 4, where I was sitting. She put her hand on my shoulder. Her hand was cold and very thin, and her wedding ring was loose on her finger. "Stand up, sweetheart," she said. "You don't have to sit through this." I stood up. I don't know why. I think I would have stood up if a stranger on a bus had asked me to in that moment. "Walk with me," she said. I walked with her. We walked, the two of us, my arm under hers, past my husband's stunned face, past the pregnant girlfriend whose smile had finally cracked, past the wedding cake that hadn't been cut and never would be. We walked out of the Belmar Hotel ballroom and into the lobby, and a black town car was already waiting at the curb, and a driver was already holding the door open. "Get in," the old woman said. I got in. I did not ask who she was. I did not ask where we were going. I had spent 10 years asking permission for everything, and I had just used up the last of it standing up from that gold chair. The town car pulled away from the Belmar at 9:47 p.m. on a Saturday in March. I know the time because I looked at my wrist out of habit. I was still wearing the watch he'd given me for our 5th anniversary. I took it off in the car. I put it in the cuff holder. I have not seen it since. She did not speak for several blocks. She let me sit there. She let me have my silence. After 10 years of being told what to feel and when to feel it, that silence was the kindest thing anyone had given me in a long time. Finally, when we passed the river, she said, "You don't know me. But I have known you since the day you were born." I turned to look at her. "My name is Marjorie Halverson," she said. "I was your mother's mother." I did not understand. My mother's mother had died when my mother was a teenager. My mother had told me that story 100 times. There was no other grandmother. There was no Marjorie. She must have seen it on my face. She reached into her purse and pulled out a leather wallet, soft and worn, and from inside the wallet she pulled out a photograph. It was my mother, at maybe 7 years old, in a blue dress, standing in front of a house I had never seen, holding the hand of the woman sitting next to me, who looked exactly the same except younger. "Your mother was given up for adoption when she was 8, Marjorie said. "Not because I didn't want her. Because I had nothing. I was 19. I was a maid in a hotel in San Francisco. They took her from me and I let them, because I believed them when they said it was the kindness." She put the photograph back in the wallet very carefully, like it was made of ash. I spent 40 years finding her again. I found her 3 months before the cancer took her. She forgave me, sweetheart. I want you to know that. Your mother forgave me. And the last thing she asked me, lying in that hospice bed in Modesto, was to look after you if you ever needed it. The car was very quiet. "I have looked after you for 8 years, she said. "You did not know it. Your scholarship to finish your degree, The one you never got to use, that was me. The down payment on the house you and your husband bought, that came from your mother's account, that you didn't know existed, that was me. I have stood at the back of every important room in your life, and I have stayed quiet because your mother told me you were proud and you would not want a stranger's money. I started to cry. Finally. It was not pretty. I would have stayed quiet tonight too, she said, if he hadn't done what he just did. She let me cry. She did not pat my hand or tell me it would be all right. She just sat there and let me come apart in the back of a town car driving across Sacramento on a Saturday night. When I could speak again, I asked her, why now? Why tonight? She looked out the window. She was quiet for a long moment. Because I'm dying, sweetheart, she said. And I have one thing left to do. The town car did not take me home. I didn't have a home anymore, technically. The house was in his name, his idea, back when I was too in love to read the deed. The town car took me to a building on the river I had passed 1,000 times and never wondered about. A stone building, 8 stories, with no sign out front. This is my company, Marjorie said. Halverson Holdings. We do real estate, mostly commercial, some residential. We've been in California since 1962. I have to tell you something. My husband's firm, the firm I had helped him build, the firm I had given up my license for, had been chasing one client for the last 18 months. One single contract that he said would put us on the map. A massive mixed-use development on the river. He talked about it at every dinner. He had a vendor in his phone he called the Whale. He had not closed the deal yet, but he was, he said, this close. I looked up at the stone building. There was a small brass plaque next to the door. Halverson Holdings, Est, 1962. The Whale. I think I laughed. I'm not sure. The next part is blurry. Marjorie did not stay long. She had me brought up to a small apartment on the 7th floor. Clean, simple, a bed already made up with white sheets. She told me to sleep. She told me a lawyer would come in the morning. She told me there was tea in the kitchen and a robe in the closet and that she had had the closet stocked the day my husband called her assistant to schedule the anniversary party at the Belmar. He called your office, I said. He called my office 4 months ago, she said, asking for a personal meeting with the owner. He did not know who I was. He still doesn't. He has been emailing my vice president for 16 months trying to land us as a client. She paused at the door. He is not going to land us, Cassidy. She left. I slept. I did not dream. Which was the only mercy of that whole night. I want to skip ahead now. I want to tell you what happened over the next 6 months because the slow part is the part that matters, and also the part that's hardest to talk about. I did not become a different person overnight. I want you to know that. The movies lie about that too. You don't go to bed a betrayed wife and wake up a powerful woman in a pantsuit. What you do is you get up the next morning and you can't figure out which side of the bed to swing your legs off, because for 10 years he slept on the right and you slept on the left, and now you don't know which side is yours. I cried in the shower for about 3 weeks straight. I lost more weight. The lawyer came. Her name was Imani, and she was the most patient woman I have ever met. She walked me through the divorce filing. She walked me through the discovery process. She walked me through what we found. What we found was that my husband had been seeing Brielle for not 1 year, but 4 years. She was 26. He had met her at a conference in Phoenix when I was recovering from my second miscarriage. He had been paying her rent on a condo in Roseville for 31 months. He had used our joint account. I want to say I was shocked. I wasn't. The shock was already gone. What I felt was something colder, something steadier, something I had never been allowed to feel before in my whole adult life. I felt clear. Marjorie did not push me. That's another thing I want to say. She did not show up at my apartment with a plan and a clipboard and tell me how I was going to take my life back. She let me grieve. She let me sleep until noon. She let me eat ice cream out of the carton, standing up at the counter. She had her assistant, a quiet, kind woman named Doris. Wait, not Doris. I want to call her Haleh. Haleh, who became, over those months, something close to a friend. What Marjorie did was she handed me, on day 42 of my new life, a folder. When you're ready, she said. I opened the folder a week later. Inside the folder were 3 things. The first was the deed to a building on K Street that Halverson Holdings had purchased in 2019 and never developed. Marjorie had transferred it into my name. Do whatever you want with it, she'd written on a post-it. Burn it down if it makes you feel better. The second thing was my old architecture license. Marjorie had paid the back fees and the continuing education hours. It was current, it was active. I could have wept all over again. The third thing was a single sheet of paper, a list of every project my husband's firm had submitted a proposal on in the last 3 years. Everyone. With notes. At the bottom, in Marjorie's looping handwriting, it said, "The River Development RFP closes on October 15. You have time, sweetheart, if you want it. I'm going to be honest with you about what I did next, not because I'm proud of it, because I want you to understand that I am not a saint. I am a woman who spent 10 years making myself small for a man who was unfaithful to me on the night of our anniversary in front of 200 people, including his own aunt. I am a woman, and women have a thing inside us that wakes up sometimes, and when it wakes up, you should get out of the way." I went back to work. I worked 16-hour days for 4 months. I rented a tiny office 2 blocks from the Halverson building, and I hired one draftsman, a kid fresh out of school named, I'll call him Theron. I pulled every favor from every old classmate I still had. I drew until my wrist hurt and my eyes blurred, and my landlord left muffins outside my door because he was worried about me. I designed a riverfront mixed-use development, affordable housing on the upper floors, local commercial on the ground, a public greenway, solar canopies, a community kitchen, things my husband would never have proposed. Because my husband had stopped caring about anything except margins around year 5, and I had not noticed because I was too busy keeping his shirts ironed, I submitted the proposal on October 14th. One day before the deadline, I did not put my full name on it. I used my maiden name. The interview was on November 2nd, a Wednesday. I wore a suit I had bought myself with my own money from a small consignment store on J Street. I wore my mother's pearls. I walked into the conference room on the 8th floor of Halverson Holdings. I had never been on the 8th floor, and I sat down. There were 5 people on the selection committee. The 5th was Marjorie. She looked at me like she had never seen me before in her life. I don't know how she did it. She is the strongest woman I have ever known. There were 3 other firms presenting that day. The third was my husband's. I am not going to lie to you and tell you I didn't know he would be there. I knew. I had asked Hallie to confirm the schedule the night before. I had timed my entrance. I had made sure he saw me in the hallway before either of us went in. The look on his face when he saw me was the look of a man who has just understood something he should have understood months ago. He went in before me. He presented his proposal. I sat in the lobby, and I did not look at my phone, and I did not fidget, and I drank a glass of water, like a woman who knew where she was. When he came out of the conference room, he stopped in front of me. "Cassidy," he said, "what are you doing here?" I looked up at him, calmly, the way Marjorie had looked at the room the night of the anniversary. "I'm here for my interview," I said. "You don't have a firm." "I have a firm now." "Casso?" he said. He sat down in the chair across from me without being invited. He had that look he used to get when he wanted me to make him feel better about something. "Cass, I know things have been hard. I know I made mistakes. I want you to know I'm not. Brielle and I. It's complicated. I miss you. I think about you every day. I want you to know that I felt nothing. That's the gift Marjorie gave me, in a way. Not money, not the building, not the license. The 4 months of silence in which I had finally heard my own voice again. "That's nice," I said. "Excuse me. They're calling me in." I went into the conference room. I presented for 47 minutes. I answered every question. Marjorie did not ask a single one. She watched me. She sat at the end of the table with her hands folded, and she watched me the way my mother used to watch me at recitals, like the watching itself was a prayer. I did not get the contract that day. I want to be clear about that. The committee deliberated for 11 days. They had a process. Marjorie had recused herself, formally in writing, the moment she saw my name on the submission list. She told me later she had wanted to recuse, and she had wanted me to win on my own, and the only thing worse than not winning would have been winning because of her. I won on my own. The award was announced on November 13th at a press event on the proposed site. There was a podium. There were cameras. There was a small crowd of city officials and reporters and the 4 other competing firms, all of whom had been invited as a courtesy. My husband was in the front row. Brielle was not with him. I had heard, through Hale, that she had moved out 2 weeks before. That the pregnancy had not, in fact, been his. I took the podium. I had a speech prepared. I had practiced it in the mirror. I did not give the speech. What I did instead was I looked at my husband in the front row in the same charcoal suit I had picked out for him at Nordstrom, and I said, "My name is Cassidy Halverson. I dropped my married name last week. I want to thank the selection committee for this honor. I want to thank the city of Sacramento for trusting a small firm with a project this important. And I want to thank my grandmother, who I did not know existed until 8 months ago, for reminding me that the worst night of my life was also the first night of the rest of it." That was the whole speech. I stepped down. The cameras flashed. My husband stood up in the front row, and he looked, for the first time in 10 years, like he understood that he had lost something. Marjorie died 4 months later. She was 78. The funeral was small. She left me the building. She left me the firm. She left me a letter in her looping handwriting that I keep in the top drawer of my desk and read once a year on the anniversary of the night at the Belmar. The letter says, "Sweetheart, I did not save you. You saved you. I just opened the door. Make sure you open it for someone else when the time comes. Love, Grandma." I am 31 years old. The wind off the river is sharp this morning. There is a town car waiting at the curb because I have a meeting in 20 minutes that I am going to be on time for. I am wearing my mother's pearls and my grandmother's wedding ring on a chain around my neck where I can feel the weight of it, where it reminds me, I am not the woman who sat at table 4. I will never be her again, but I want her to know. I want every woman sitting at her own table 4 right now, holding her own untouched flute of champagne, listening to her own husband at her own microphone. I want you to know that the door opens. Sometimes it takes an old woman in a gray suit. Sometimes it takes a folder on day 42. Sometimes it takes you, alone at 3 in the morning, deciding you are done. But it opens. I promise you. It opens. I think about that night at the Belmar a lot, not as often as I used to. That's the thing that surprises me. The first year, I thought about it every morning when I opened my eyes. Now it visits me maybe once a month, like an old neighbor stopping by, and I let it sit at the kitchen table and have a cup of coffee, and then I let it go. What I've learned in the quiet years since is that the worst thing that ever happened to me was also the most honest thing that ever happened to me. My husband did not destroy my life that night. He just told me the truth about a life I had already lost, slowly, over 10 years, by trading pieces of myself for a piece that was never going to come. He stopped pretending. And the second he stopped, I had to stop too. That's the part nobody tells you about betrayal. Yes, it breaks you, but it also breaks the cage you didn't know you were in. I think about cause and effect now in a way I never did before. Every small choice I made for 10 years, every time I said, "It's fine," when it wasn't, every time I let a comment go because the fight wasn't worth it, every time I ironed a collar instead of working on my own portfolio, every one of those was a vote for the woman who eventually sat at table 4. I don't say this to blame myself. I say it because I want any woman listening to understand that you are voting, every day, with the small things. The big things only ever come from 1,000 small things you stopped noticing. Marjorie taught me 3 things before she died, and I want to leave you with them because I think they are the only things that matter. She taught me that goodness without a spine is not goodness, it's permission. Be kind, but be kind from strength, not from fear. The woman who stood up at table 15 had spent 40 years finding her daughter, and she did it without bitterness, but she did not let the world walk over her either. That's the difference between a doormat and a decent person, and I had been confusing the two my whole adult life. She taught me that intelligence is not how much you know. Intelligence is how clearly you can see what is in front of you. My husband was a smart man. He was also blind. He could not see Brielle for what she was. He could not see me for what I was. He could not see Marjorie walking into his client's office for 16 months. Smart and clear are not the same thing. Pray, if you pray, for clear. And she taught me that strength is not a feeling. Strength is what you do on the morning of day 43, when the folder is sitting on the counter and your hands are still shaking and you open it anyway. Nobody is going to feel ready. The door does not open for the ready. It opens for the willing. I am Cassidy. I sat at table 4. I am not sitting there anymore. Neither, I hope, are you.